The night I decided to give him a ride home was supposed to be forgettable. The kind of night that dissolves into background noise by morning. Instead, it became the kind of memory that tightens your chest years later, the kind that asks a quiet question every time you think you know what kindness looks like. If you stay with me until the end, you'll understand why a simple, thank you, can change the direction of a life. It was late, the office lights humming like they were tired of staying awake, when I noticed him slumped at his desk. We worked side by side for years without really knowing each other beyond polite nods and shared deadlines. That night, the usual sharpness in his eyes was gone, replaced by a fog that smelled like cheap whiskey and regret. He laughed too loudly at nothing, knocked over his chair trying to stand, and apologized to the air like it might forgive him. Everyone else had already left, choosing warmth and dinner tables over awkward responsibility. I almost did too. Almost. I asked if he was okay. He said he was great, then missed the trash can by a foot and sat on the floor like gravity had personally betrayed him. That's when I knew he wasn't getting home alone. Calling a cab felt like the right thing, but he fumbled his phone, mumbled about money, and said his wife hated taxis. I don't know why that sentence landed the way it did, but it did. So I grabbed my coat, helped him up, and walked him to my car, the city air cold enough to sober his cheeks but not his thoughts. The drive was quiet at first, broken only by the windshield wipers and his uneven breathing. Halfway there, words started spilling out, the way they do when someone's defenses are soaked through. He talked about being tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. About mistakes at work that followed him home. About a marriage that had turned into two people surviving in the same space, careful not to touch the wrong nerve. I listened because interrupting felt cruel, and because sometimes listening is the only gift you have. When we reached his house, the lights were on. He froze, suddenly scared like a kid who broke a window. He asked me to wait, then stumbled to the door. I waited because leaving felt wrong, and because something in his voice had sounded like a quiet plea. A minute passed. Then two. Then the door opened wider, and his wife stood there, not angry like I expected, but worried in a way that looked practiced. She thanked me for bringing him home. Her voice was steady, her eyes tired. She asked if I could help him inside. We guided him to the couch, and he fell asleep before his head touched the cushion. She pulled a blanket over him with a tenderness that surprised me. Then she turned to me and said, "Please, sit for a moment." That's when I felt it, the pull that keeps you watching, because you know something important is about to be said. She made tea, the kettle singing softly in a kitchen that smelled like lemon cleaner and old hopes. She didn't ask me personal questions. She didn't apologize for him. She just said thank you again, slower this time, like she wanted the words to land. Then she told me about the man he used to be. About how he once danced with her in this very kitchen when they couldn't afford furniture. About how he'd lost his brother years ago and never learned how to put that weight down. About how she loved him fiercely, even when loving him felt like carrying water in cupped hands. I realized then that I'd been wrong to judge his messiness as weakness. It was grief, poorly managed, leaking into places it didn't belong. She looked at me and said, "You didn't just bring him home. You gave him back to himself tonight." I didn't know how to respond. I mumbled something small, stood to leave, and she stopped me at the door. "Please," she said, "come by tomorrow. I think it would mean something to him to know he wasn't alone." I went home thinking that was the end of it. I slept badly, replaying the night, telling myself I'd done a decent thing and that decent things don't usually ask for more. Morning came with sunlight and doubts. I considered texting an excuse. Instead, I found myself standing at their door again, hands empty, heart uncertain. Here's the moment that keeps people listening, because it's where everything turns. When the door opened, it wasn't the man from the night before who greeted me. It was someone smaller, quieter, sober in a way that looked like shame. He didn't remember everything, but he remembered enough. He thanked me without meeting my eyes, then surprised both of us by crying. Not loud, dramatic crying. The kind that slips out when you've been holding your breath for years. We sat at the kitchen table. His wife placed 3 plates down like this was normal, like we were always meant to be there together. He talked about getting help, about being scared to admit he needed it. She talked about boundaries, about love that doesn't mean enabling. I talked about nothing important, just enough to keep the air from feeling too heavy. When I left, she hugged me. It was quick, respectful, but full of meaning. She said, "Thank you for choosing kindness when it was inconvenient." Weeks passed. Work settled into routine again, but something had shifted. He started leaving on time. He drank water instead of coffee all afternoon. He laughed differently, like he trusted the sound. One day, he told me he'd started therapy. Another day, he said he and his wife were taking walks after dinner, just to talk. I nodded, happy for him, not realizing the story wasn't done with me yet. The invitation came on a quiet Friday. "Dinner," they said. No pressure. I almost declined, afraid of stepping into a space that wasn't mine. I went anyway. The house felt warmer this time. Laughter came easily. After dessert, his wife asked me to step outside with her. The night air was soft, the stars faint. This is the part people don't forget, because it reframes everything. She handed me an envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. She'd written about gratitude, about how that night had been a mirror for them both. She wrote about forgiveness as an action, not a feeling. At the bottom, she'd added a note: "If you ever doubt that small choices matter, remember this family." I tried to give it back. She shook her head. "Please keep it," she said. "You'll need it someday." I did. Months later, when my own life cracked open in ways I didn't expect, when I felt invisible and tired and tempted to numb the edges, I read that letter. I remembered a couch, a blanket, a cup of tea, and a woman who thanked me not with spectacle, but with truth. I remembered a man who chose help because someone chose to stay. That's the message I carry now. Kindness doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it shows up as a ride home, a chair at a table, a letter folded into an envelope. Sometimes it asks you to keep watching, to stay until the end of a moment that could change everything. And when it does, when you choose it, you may be thanked in a way you'll never forget, not because it was grand, but because it was real.